All right, I thought I would I touched up my hair a little bit, a little bit of whatever, I don't know, housekeeping business. Um I cut my hair, I cut my beard. I'm liking mostly my uh situation with grooming and so on a little bit. Um I'm just loading up X right now because I made a few posts that I wanted to quote, and that's the thrust of this particular video. Um, let's see. Okay. The quotes are a little background is I've been shot. I've lived in fear of ambush and attempts to kill me. Um, I've um known about 7 people that have died in 4 years. Um, I've smelled a 5-day-old corpse in the middle of summer heat. Um, and while I've never killed anyone or been part of the military, I have allowed trauma from physical abuse propel me into irrational anger towards a loved one, um, and a lot of rage and so on. So basically, what I would like to say is that I'm a civilian simulacrum, in a sense, of a veteran of combat. I've gotten like a little piece independently in civilian life that is commonly associated with combat veterans in militaries, and so on. Now, maybe it's also similar to gangsters and stuff like that, gang members. And I certainly have my flaws and failings in a sort of gangster kind of mentality way at times. But at least when I was getting shot, it was a self-sacrificial thing of thinking, well, I'm an awful person. The world would be better off without me. Quod era demonstratum, get myself shot, die, world will be better. I will give up my life so that my people can live better lives. So that sacrificial element was there. Now, you could argue it's due to schizophrenia. You can argue that it's stupid. You can argue that it's silly and ridiculous. But the moral choice is similar to those who serve in military and police and so on. I will take the penalty personally up until death for my people's well-being. Now, you can argue the mechanism of getting there was off kilter. Yes, I'm schizophrenic, basically. But, the moral choice aspect was still, I would say, valiant to some extent. Okay, so basically, my 3 posts are the sick, putrid filth of a society of weaklings that spit on its heroes and champions, disrespecting them and their ancestors, fighting, bleeding, dying, squandering their legacy. Respect the maintenance of civilization or you won't have civilization. And then the next post is blood, sweat, and tears of patriots and tyrants is the cost of civilization. Lose it and rebuilding costs double. Total neglect costs triple. Stupid, comfortable slobs voting for luxury beliefs at the cost of their own vulnerable, poor, and needy. And then I say, what the hell are we fighting for? A virtuous society. Not the kind where half the enforcers want to overthrow the system. where duty is duly given for sacrifice, where honor is duly given for sacrifice, and recompense for services rendered no one else would do. One that takes care of its own, not invading foreigners. And I suppose I'll add a few other bits to this, which is that led up to those posts basically. After I also posted a video clip from here on YouTube about First Blood, when John Rambo is saying nothing is over, and has his breakdown. That's what led to those posts. But before that, I was thinking more in a sort of like, I wasn't remembering my own, like, being shot and smelling corpses and stuff like that, and knowing so many people that died. So before that point, this is what I had to say. I'm torn between two positions of only in death does duty end versus rest, you've earned it. I've been struggling 16 years against the decay, tyranny, and barbarism emerging in the West. I started as one of a scattered remnant of civically minded patriots from previous generations and so on, and witnessed the kindling of the struggle for civilization into a roaring inferno. I don't know if I actually participated in that in any major way or helpful way or anything like that. I think if I did participate, I was helpful for about 12 to 13 of that 16 years. Maybe not the entire 16 years. But that was because I woke up because of the Occupy movement. So basically, and the only reason I was leftist before is because the left was basically saying what Donald Trump's saying now about constant imperialist invasions, freedom of speech, anti-mass surveillance, and a struggle against, I want to say oligarchs, but I know that's kind of communist coded. But I mean like Amazon, Jeff Bezos kind of oligarchs, and Elon's H-1B visa sort of importing Indians and firing native-born workers in the USA, and replacing them with Indians and Hindus and stuff like that. Kind of oligarchs. That sort of anti-tariff sort of oligarch, basically. So that's why I was loyal to the left, because they were the ones talking about those things, and that's why I'm loyal to Trump, because Trump's talking about those things, and he's doing something about it, which the left refused to do. They went woke instead. Anyways, I'm terrified if I give up fighting with all my strength, I'm terrified if I give up fighting with all my strength, I'll become one of those stupid dipshit priests arguing about angels on the head of a pin while the city dies. But on the other hand, I can kind of see how others will carry on the fight and win eventually, and I've been doing it for 16 years straight. Homer's epics are about fighting war and returning home from it. I wouldn't be surprised at all if each mythological aspect, like the Cyclops or Circe, or what do they call them? Skibdus and, Scylla and Charybdis, or Scylla and Charybdis. The whirlpool and the sort of Hydra sort of monster in the cliff represented different aspects to psychology in coming home from warfare and trauma and healing from it and so on. Anyways, I'm just afraid I'll become a Lotus Eater if I give up fighting the culture war. Now, not to be confused with the Lotus Eaters of Carl Benjamin's company or something like that, but rather his company's name, the Lotus Eaters, actually derives from the Odyssey on the Lotus Eaters. And basically, the Lotus Eaters are the people, and this is going to sound really obvious once I spell it out, the people that look for mindless pleasure and unearned pleasure and don't want to go back to the real world. And they just fade away, basically. They don't do anything with their lives, they just fade away. There's a book my dad had called Heroes and Heroin about the Vietnam War. And basically, the Vietnamese War veterans were addicted to heroin, which is an opiate, which affects the dopamine centers directly and so on, and is addictive and life-destroying and body-destroying and soul-destroying and so on. But the trauma weakened their resistance to the opiate so that they were hooked after the first or second time, basically. A lot of them were. Marijuana serves as sort of a variant of this process in a less destructive and less addictive way. I mentioned what I've gone through myself, and my particular addiction is cigarettes. I like having my mind relatively solid. Now, I used to have an addiction to cough syrup, and that was a euphoriant, which brought about chemical happiness, sort of like liquid courage is alcohol. And I won't get into the reasons why I picked that one particularly, other than the feeling it gave me in the euphoria direction from childhood trauma. And then after I basically started to quit it, I encountered the things I described earlier in my own situation and so on. So I'm a little addicted to cigarettes, which will kill me eventually, but they're not messing with my mind, and I'm struggling and persevering through my traumas from childhood and 6 years ago, basically. And my encounter with the divine as the perfect, omnipotent, infinite judge to my imperfect, flawed, limited self. And my previous video is from my experience with God directly. Through signs from God and so on. Now, when they first occurred, I wasn't really sure what was going on necessarily, but I'm beginning to think, and this is what tied into why there's heroic narratives and epics and poems and special honors to soldiers and so on, is if you can tie your struggles with a heroic narrative, a story that puts you in a place of honor, then you can bear almost any trauma. Any trauma. Any dangers, any suffering, whatever you want to call it, as long as you're put in the heroic mold and people recognize it. That social dimension and connection and brotherhood is so important. It's so important. It's insane how vital that is. If you don't have that, then you're done for. Now, it's a very powerful motif, a heroic struggle against evil with all the dangers and so on. The problem is when a society hasn't actually faced real dangers generally for a long time, people start imagining themselves as heroes who are struggling against evil when they're really not actually heroic. And the evil thing might not be that evil. Like it's sort of like the social equivalent of like those women doing that whole Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat sort of arm, elbows up, kind of Mark Carney, as he said, elbows up, kind of a fighting stance propaganda that the Democrats did for like New York or something like that, or San Francisco. I think it was New York. And it looked absolutely pathetic because like the woman didn't know how to like hold their arms up in a way that would actually protect from a punch, showing they didn't understand fighting at all while trying to claim the legitimacy of someone that knows how to fight and is willing to fight. And it was just like pathetic. It's not necessarily like a soy boy could do the same thing. It's not that they were all women, basically. It's that they were all pathetic physically and so on, with no understanding of physical violence or anything like that. Who've never had a hard day in their life, basically, except maybe like their latte was like got the wrong name on the cup one time or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like stolen valor in a sense. I know that's a very technical term in a sense, but you know what I mean? It's that general direction of trying to accrue legitimacy when you don't earn it in the first place. You haven't been through the fire in any way, shape, or form while claiming to be the most tempered, toughest steel imaginable. And these people disrespect those who have been tested and tried by the fire. And they don't know their place. And the question forever, always for societies, is why are we fighting? And the answer is, for a lot of people, I think, we're fighting for a society that can get away with doing that for a long time. Because it's so well off and continues to be so well off. The goal is not to have an everlasting empire. The goal is to make the good times last as long as possible before the next collapse in cyclical or rhyming history. And to that end, propaganda, stories, art, culture, fiction, narratives on the truly heroic and showing the real elements of what it would actually be like to be in dangerous situations to better prepare the next generation for facing them, while also keeping a very potent, hardcore masculinity intact, because as we know, feminism has destroyed society and civilization, is necessary to maintain civilization. Keeping the masculinity intact is vital to keeping civilization intact. Women will follow strong men. The men just need to be strong, basically. They need to be cunning, wise, strong, and confident, and tough. And they need to be virtuous, and they need to at least recognize when someone's the real deal, even if themselves are not. And part of the reason the baby boomers are such brats and selfish pricks is because they weren't taught that. They were given life on a silver platter through the greatest generation, the World War II veterans, the World War I veterans, the Great Depression upbringing people brought up during the Great Depression and fought in World War II. They overcorrected to safeguard their children's future in the direction of kindness, compassion, safety, and so on. They spoiled their children in the end, basically. And the thing is, it's not even like, don't get me wrong, it's not like child abuse was not a thing. I get that. But like, the pure safety of the entire population in general led to spoiled brat syndrome. And what we're learning is when a society gets too safe in general, it collapses into feminism, which leads to barbarians invading and taking over the lands and collapsing it back into total barbarism in the end. My activism at this point amounts to trying to reinitiate people into the masculine as fast as possible to resist the real barbarians. Like the George Orwell quote goes, civilization sleeps well at night or safely at night because of rough men manning the walls and guarding the walls as night watchmen. That's literally what we need to get back to as fast as possible as a civilization, or else we'll get conquered by Islam or the Third World or something like that. And the globalists are the peak of luxury beliefs and so on, who are inviting them in, basically. So yeah, I just want to stress all that, and I hope you understand what I'm getting at and so on. A certain minimal amount of masculine toughness, bravado, strength, virtues, and so on is necessary to keep a civilization going. And once that is abandoned because it's tough and no one wants to really get... Trust me, everybody wants the honors of going through the fire. Nobody wants to go through the fire actually. It's forced onto you. We need to accept a limited amount of forcing people through the fire in order to keep the argument going that we need to be on guard, because the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And once society gets too safe, it forgets the lessons and the reasons why civilization needs to be continued. And the rules governing limitations on behavior in a common sense way fall apart. And that's why dying civilizations breed laws like flies on shit, or like rabbits. So that's how it all ties together, basically. And if you notice, civilizations tend to have a boom-bust cycle. So it's one of those things we can't prevent forever. But this round we can at least win and set up lessons to prevent it from happening again too soon. We can lengthen the time our civilization exists before it collapses once more.